So usually February and March are the best 2 months to sow annual growing plants. So plants that aren't perennials, ones that you have to grow year in, year out. So peppers, tomatoes are more March than February. This episode though, we're going to focus more on the February sowing. And for the most part, the February sowing will take place inside, whereas the March sowing will mostly take place outside in a greenhouse. Simply because in February it's that little bit colder, but you do have to get things started off that early, especially saying that pepper seeds, they can take a month or so to germinate. So I started off by opening up my seed box and having a look what I didn't have. There was quite a lot in there, seeds that I'd used previous years, and some I used last year, some that I didn't. There were quite a few flowers in there, some we got for free. Just what garden centres were handing out as they were going out of date, because people really didn't seem to want to be buying them. So you got a free pack of seeds when you made a purchase, and that was just quite good for us. But as a side effect, it just meant that we have a lot of flower seeds, so we're going to have to find something to do with them this year. So if we reference the plan that I made in the last episode, and if you haven't seen the last episode, we talked about how to plan your allotment, your garden, covering things as what you should decide to grow and NPK ratios, along with timing and other various general things. There should be a link in the top left corner here just to see that video if you haven't seen it yet. It's called How to Plan an Allotment. If we look on this plan here, you'll see I've written aubergines twice in little boxes up in the corner here. They're raised beds that I have at the allotment plot. I've decided that I'm only going to have one raised bed full of aubergines. I'm also going to have another one full of sweet peppers. Originally, I didn't intend to grow sweet bell peppers this year. However, I got a free pack of seeds and I thought, well, why not? So first on our list, peppers. Generally peppers take about a month to start, anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks. It really depends. Generally the hotter the peppers are, the longer it takes them to germinate. In fact, a few years ago I grew Butylochia ghost peppers and those took approximately 7 weeks to actually germinate, which honestly at that point I was thinking, are these things even viable? But you do kind of have to hang in there with them because some they just take longer than it feels like they should. But anyway, the next obvious thing to put down is aubergines because, we've just been talking about them. Aubergines will generally germinate within about 3 weeks. Varies from variety to variety, but it took about 3 weeks for mine to come up. And then finally, if we have a look at the bottom of the plot here, well, second from the bottom of the plot, you can see that I've put down onions. I'm planning on growing 2 different varieties of onions this year. The first one I'm going to have to start from seeds called Bedfordshire Champion, but I'm also growing an onion called Stuttgarter from Onion Sets, and I'll explain the difference about that in a little bit. So once I finally get this box sorted out, I can see that I'm going to have to start 3 different types of peppers, aubergines and onions from seed. I also got rid of some seeds that were out of date and some that didn't grow last year, just to clear out the box a bit. Now the next part may seem a little bit obvious, you just sow the seeds, right? Well, there's a little bit more to it than that. First thing to consider, what sort of growing medium do you want to use? I'm just using multi-purpose compost, simply because for me that's the most affordable, and also it's just what I've always worked with, so I know how that medium works. But another popular medium is also cocoa coir, which is actually ground up husks of coconut. Usually when you buy this it'll be in a dehydrated packet, and you have to add water to it to get it to fluff up. I've never actually worked with that stuff, so I can't say whether it's much of any good or not, but it will not come with any nutrients in it at all. So if you start growing things in there, be aware you'll probably have to give some multi-purpose fertiliser to that just to get them started off, well, at least not long after they're started off anyway. Starting things on paper towels is also quite useful, especially for seeds that you can't get to germinate very easily. A good example of this would be parsnip seeds. I've always had problems with parsnip seeds, and I'm considering this year using the method of getting the parsnip seeds, put on a piece of damp kitchen roll, put them in a bag, leave them in a window, make sure I keep giving them a mist over with a bit of water to keep them moist, and hopefully that should decrease the time it takes them to germinate. The big problem with me and parsnips, if I sow them direct in the ground in May, what happens is that parsnips take a long time to germinate, say about 7-8 weeks, and as a result weeds will grow away you've sown everything. So it's very hard to actually tell what are parsnips and what are weeds, and if you try and weed around it you'll just inevitably pull the load up without knowing. The container that you're growing them in is also very important to note. I didn't want to use the seed starting cells simply because I know that later on this year I'm going to be growing quite a few different vegetables in the greenhouse, and they're what I want to use to start those other vegetables. So as a result, I question, well, what's the best thing I can use without actually spending any money on it that I can start seeds in? And the answer for me is more or less any plastic container you can get your hands on that would usually just be thrown away. So in my case that was tubs from mushrooms. Whenever we had portobello mushrooms, we'd just save the tubs, wash them out with a bit of soap and water, put them to one side, save them, and those will be perfect for starting my onions in. And as I also just mentioned, seed starting cells are quite a good idea. I am using those inside, but I'm going to be using them in the propagator to start the peppers and the aubergines. So they'll be in an additional plastic tub with another piece of plastic over the top of them, just to act as like a miniature greenhouse effect to keep the heat in. Hopefully that way it'll encourage the seeds to germinate that little bit quicker with it being warmer. Another very good option is to use toilet roll tubes, the little cardboard tubes from in the middle of toilet rolls and kitchen rolls. Usually they're quite good for sowing things in and starting them off. I'm planning actually in April to start my sweet corn in these, and we've been saving them for well over a year to get up to the amount that I need. It'll be roughly 200 odd loo roll tubes I'll need. In fact, it's probably best if I show you how to make one of these things because they're very useful to use. So literally all we need is just cardboard loo roll tubes and a pair of scissors. So I have two readily made here. You can see they're folded over at the bottom there, just so the soil doesn't fall out. You can use a marker pen just to mark off 4 points on the loo roll if you want, but completely unnecessary. Literally all you need, pair of scissors, loo roll tube. What you want to do is about 2/3 of an inch, chop into it about equal lengths apart, 4 chops on the roll. What I want to do is just fold in all the flaps like that. Then you have to get them to interlock. And all you do to get them to interlock is you have to have one edge in, one edge out. So that one's in, this one's over it, so this next one has to be in, so on. And you'll come over, and what you'll notice is you have to kind of twist one round to go in. So it's this one here and twist it to go in. See, you just let it go in. You kind of have to force it down shut, like that. And so it kind of holds itself shut. And that way you get a tube just to sow your seeds in. So the first thing I'm going to start off sowing is onions. And as you remember I said a minute ago, I'm going to be doing onions from both sets and seeds. The difference is that onion sets, whilst they're easier to grow, they're slightly more likely to bolt, simply because this is essentially the onion's second year. You see, onions, they have two growing stages. They're what's called biannuals. So they'll start off 1 year, start growing from seed, and the winter will come, they'll go dormant, they'll just stay as the bulb. Then the following spring they'll send up a shoot that'll have a flower head, and that'll produce a seed, and then the life cycle repeats. And as a result, the onion sets are basically on the second year, whereas the onion seeds are on the first. And that's why onions are slightly more likely to bolt if you grow them from sets. Now when it comes to growing from seed with the onions, I've only had limited success, and that's why I'm growing 200 onions from sets and 200 onions from seeds. And it should actually end up being about 250 onion seeds that I plant in this video, simply because I'm not entirely sure how many of them will and won't germinate. However, I only got the seeds last year, so they should be fine. I should also mention, while we're talking about bulbs and that, this time of year you should probably have your taters ready, chitting. What that means is the little eyes growing on your taters, you want to leave them in the sunlight so they get nice stubby little eyes. If you leave them in the dark they'll go really long, and actually there are a few that have gone like that this year. But I have already chosen out and got my taters, so I'm growing Sarpo Mira as my main crop. Lady Christie is the extra early, and then also Aaron Pilot is just an early. But on to the onions anyway. So I started off by taking the mushroom trays, cleaning them out again, and poking some holes in the bottom with a pen. I then filled them with multi-purpose compost. Now obviously if I was to just leave these on a windowsill and I was to water them, all the water would go everywhere. So what I did was I got some tin foil, measured it out, doubled it over, and made those into little makeshift trays around the bottom of the tubs. And then using an old pencil I made a few holes ready to sow the onion seeds in. And I wanted to do them individually so I could count exactly how many I was sowing. And that worked out to be roughly 230 seeds. And as you can see, if we look at them a month later, they come up just fine. These were sown on the 12th of February 2020. It's currently the 11th of March 2020, and these are looking just fine. The next things I had to sow were the orange bell peppers. Now, I thought I'd try something a little bit different with this. I had an old tray from some crackers that I'd bought that had a lid attached to the top of it. And this would be perfect because it'd create its own built-in propagator effect. So I went ahead, filled it up with a bit of compost. I poked a couple of holes in the bottom, made one of the tinfoil trays like I did for the onions, pricked in the holes with a pencil and sowed the seeds. And admittedly, the propagator effect did work quite well, but that was until I couldn't really use it anymore simply because there was less than a centimetre of headspace. And the pepper seedlings are obviously taller than a centimetre, so I just kind of have to leave it open now. A good idea, but looking back on it, probably not as good as I thought it was going to be. The next peppers I have to sow are called Bishop's Crown, and these are actually quite interesting peppers, given the fact that they're not really chilies and they're not really sweet peppers. They're more like chilies that have a very, very small amount of heat to them. So slight in fact that some people can't taste it. And when I used one of these peppers, I couldn't actually taste the heat off them myself. I'm also growing another type of pepper called a lunchbox. These are particularly good snack peppers, and they're supposed to be quite productive plants. However, there were only 10 seeds in the packet I bought, so I thought, well, I might as well sow them all at once, hadn't I? And when I finished sowing them, I'd actually got 2 seeds left because there wasn't enough space in the 6-cell starting tray that I had. So I decided to plant those other 2 seeds in with the aubergines. It's probably best that I point this out, but when choosing which aubergines you want to grow, usually an aubergine variety like Black Beauty will only produce 2 or 3 fruits per plant. And this is simply because the fruits, they're usually quite large, aren't they? And although these large purple fruits are what people mostly want, I'd suggest trying to grow a variety with a smaller fruit, simply because you're more likely to get more fruits off of it. The variety of aubergine that I've chosen to grow is called Golden Egg. And the reason I've chosen this one, well, actually there's 2 reasons. The first one is that they're quite small fruits, so I feel that I'm more likely to get more aubergine in weight off of this than I would something like Black Beauty aubergines. But additionally, when I've grown Black Beauties in the past, I've had problems getting the flowers to pollinate. The Golden Egg aubergine, however, has flowers that are quite similar to tomato flowers. They have a sheath around the end, so they're a lot more likely to self-pollinate. I'm actually quite pleased with the way the aubergines came up this year. They all seem to have come up quite quickly. In previous years they have taken their time, but this year, as I mentioned, all except for one cell here, as you can see, they've all come up. Even the 2 lunchbox peppers at the back of this one have come up. Now, I'm not entirely sure whether that's more where that section of the propagate was sitting, because that little box caught sunlight a lot more than the other one did. The Bishop's Crown, there's only one that I can see coming up so far. I don't think that's the fault of the seed. It might just be more the sunlight got the other one a bit better, and as a result the germination was better. Now, we're saying about the light, some people do actually use light bulbs to help the plants grow quicker. I've never done that, so I can't really say whether it helps much or not. I should imagine it would, but I just don't want to go to the hassle of doing it, and what I'm doing at the minute, just putting them in the windowsill, seems to work fine for me. So you just do what works for you, really. But yes, anyway, thanks for watching. Hope this has been helpful for you. There should be a link up there again for the video how to plan an allotment. This should also be the latest video we've got up just over here. And if you'd like to have a look at the Awesome Allotment YouTube channel for loads more videos like this, that'd be awesome.